On this week's episode of the WNP podcast, the Pac-12 is officially dead. Stay tuned. Episode 177 of the We're Not Professionals podcast. I'm your host, Mike Mitchelson, and joining me today, as always, my co-host, Chase Crawshaw. Chase, how are you today?
Thanks, well. Thank you for asking. Super excited to talk about the show. We've been doing a little bit of prep work for this, and I've been super excited. It's gonna be a fun year of football, and the last year is college football as we know it. So it'll be good to prep. How you doing, Mike?
I am doing fantastic. Even the last hour of work today, the team decided to go to a local brewery and have a couple of drinks. So got to do that. Now recording a little bit later than usually, but it's going to be an exciting time because we are talking about college football. And geez, how long have I personally been annoying the piss out of you with how excited I've been with college football? Like, it's been at least a month and a half. I can't wait.
Right, it's been quite a while for sure. Like, it's been little snippets here and there. It's been ramping up more and more leading up to the show. So the hype has definitely been there. It's exciting, and you know what always gets my juices flowing for college football, Mike?
Oh boy.
I think it's sick edits on YouTube that makes it. He makes those college football hype videos.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Those things are. I'm looking for that it's him, or do you know for sure that it's him?
I'm pretty sure it is him. Yeah.
All right.
He's not the only one that does them though. There's so many guys who do them, but Sick Edits is the one that I think gets the most views for sure.
Well, yeah, he's the one that used the search in that video a couple years ago.
Yeah,
and like that opening was the hardest I've ever seen in my life for a hype video. So I always go back and I like to watch those because that really gets the juices flowing.
Yeah, college football there's just a different feeling around it, especially if you were able to attend a Big Ten school like myself, where big noon Saturdays are going on and just so much fun when it comes to college football. So on today's episode, we are going to be talking about, first, all of the changes that we're seeing happen in the college football landscape, because a lot are happening. And Chase and I were talking about it when we were getting ready for the show. Like, is this team here, is the college football playoff expanding next year or the following? There were so many questions. And I've got a feeling that a lot of people have those same questions. So today we are going to be going over every change that is coming up here in the next couple of years when it comes to college football. So you no longer have to worry. When is everything changing? When are we seeing conferences realign? We'll talk about that in a very brief time here. And then we are going to be talking about the top storylines that we see in this upcoming college football season. Man, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of fun in this college football season, and I'm really excited to get to those. And then we are going to be talking about, at the very least, our top 10 teams when it comes to our preseason rankings. And preseason rankings, they don't always mean much because teams fluctuate so often, but they get the views, and that's what matters, right, Chase?
This is where you're so wrong, Mike, because everybody knows you better be right in the preseason, because if you have 1 ounce of something wrong, like, you are a fraud, you're terrible at your job, you deserve to get fired, your podcast deserves to be ended. So this is when it matters, Mike. This is the time.
Yeah,
you're just wrong.
It's a good thing that we're never wrong, because we're gonna nail our top 10. We got a nice consensus here. We didn't go just strictly our rankings, but we combined them, did a little consensus ranking. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But Chase, we will start with a little overview of all the changes that are coming. I think the first thing we should talk about is, of course, the playoff. And when does the playoff expand? It won't be this year, but it will be for the 2024-2025 season. Now, what's going to happen is we are going to go to a 12-team playoff format. Your top 4 division winners will receive byes, and then 5 through 12, you will have those 8 teams play. The bottom 4 seeds of those 8 are going to play the top 4 seeds of those 8. And here's the cool thing that I didn't know before doing research on the show. The teams have the option of playing on their home turf, but they can also designate a separate turf that is not their home stadium to play that game. So, for example, if a team wants to go play at the legendary Rose Bowl, Coliseum, whatever it might be, as long as they designate that, that's completely fine. But at the same time, you could have a playoff game at the Big House in Ann Arbor. So it's going to be a lot of fun there. And I think it's an interesting spin that teams don't need to play in their home stadium.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't imagine very many teams are going to take that option, unless you happen to be one of these schools and you might live to you might be a Cali team that wants to play the Rose Bowl. At the end of the day, you're still the closest team. You're going to get more fans likely than not. Blah blah blah, like that type of thing. Then yeah, sure, that's fine. But I don't imagine that we're going to see a Georgia TCU on the East Coast. That wouldn't really make much sense. So I really don't know how many teams are going to take that option. But if any do, it'll be cool.
Yeah, or if you're like I don't know. I'm trying to think of a trash team. Like Duke. If Duke wants to go play somewhere else, they can obviously do that. But that's going to be a lot of fun. And then let's talk a little bit about division realignment. We have seen some more go down. We'll start with the Big Ten because the Big Ten is our kind of home. Being up in Michigan, Chase, a Michigan fan, me, attended Michigan State, not a Walmart Wolverine. So let's kind of talk about the Big Ten, who's in, who's out. We do see Oregon, UCLA, USC, and Washington all joining the Big Ten as of next season. We could see more potentially because when you look at the Pac-12 and their big departure, a lot of teams have been leaving. There's only 4 teams left in the Pac-12. And those schools being Stanford, Cal, Washington State, and Oregon State. I heard the Big Ten may have interest in Stanford and Cal. But as of right now, the only official is that Oregon, Washington, UCLA, USC all coming to the Big Ten.
For football, it really does make sense in terms of like revenue. It sucks for these smaller schools that we got to play in these conferences. Like it's only a matter of time before like the Rutgers and Marylands are forced out of the Big Ten. Like I can't imagine that they're going to be part of a 2022, 24 team conference. Like I just don't see that happening. So they're going to get relegated to like an AAC level type of conference. Maybe there's a new one that'll be founded coming up. I don't know, but you got to feel for those teams a little bit. It is going to make some of these games more exciting within the Big Ten. We're going to get to see a matchup like Michigan and USC maybe a little more often than normal. I know that in terms of those viewership dollars, it's going to help a lot. And then for football, the travel's not a big deal, but it really does also suck for these other sports, like having to be on the volleyball team and having to travel cross country. I got a very strong feeling you're not going to be flown everywhere like the football team is. You're going to be riding out on that bus. Like that sucks. So I really feel bad for those sports, but as I mentioned, it's gonna be fun for football.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the ACC real quick because they have no changes actually. Notre Dame, they still have a 5-game arrangement with the conference, and at this point, I think they just need to join the conference. But as of right now, the ACC, they maintain their 14 teams because they do have a television deal running through 2036. And that's ultimately why there's such a downfall with the Pac-12. Because the Pac-12 and the Big 12, they were racing for that television deal. There's only so many dollars to put out there on the line for this big deal. The Big 12 got it done first. The Pac-12, they had an offer from Apple TV where it was a subscription base. And in the past, the Pac-12 have tried subscription-based methods and they haven't worked out. So that's the reason the Pac-12 is disbanding. They lost the race to the Big 12. And while we're there with the Big 12, let's talk about them quickly, and then you can kind of go in with the Pac-12 and Big 12, whatever you feel. But as of this season, BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF will all be joining the Big 12. So that's for this season, 2023. Next season, they're going to be losing Oklahoma and Texas, but they will gain Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Deion Sanders' team, and Utah. They will all be joining the Big 12.
It's like play the circus music. It's just so much moving at one time. It really is overwhelming. But just circling back to that Pac-12 real quick. Right now they have the Pac-12 network, and they show like all their games, all their sports on that. And I can't remember the name of the guy who came over and took charge of the Pac-12, but he was supposed to be some guru when it came to revenue generation in terms of getting brand deals, getting broadcasting deals, and he failed miserably. Like he is the reason that conference went down the drain and that it died, because he didn't do a good enough job. So like as you said, they missed out on that big broadcasting deal, and now they're falling apart. They're suffering some pretty dire consequences. But looking over at the at the Big 12 with all that movement, like it still is a lot going on, and there's still going to be some pretty spread out teams in that conference too. But we're going to be at a point here in the next 2-3 years where it's the Power 5 is gone. It's going to be Power 3. It's just it's going to be. I mean, I guess ACC will still stick around, so I guess I'll call it Power 4. It'll be the SEC, Big 10, Big 12, and ACC, and everything else will just be kind of hanging out. It's only a matter of time before we get to Power 3 and maybe even Power 2. The movement is really excessive, and just you trying to outline right there, just a 6-team swing in like 2 seasons, like it's kind of emblematic on that mess.
Yeah, and then the SEC, they've done the least movement thus far, aside from the ACC, and that's because they are only bringing in Oklahoma and Texas in 2024. So the SEC seems to continue to get those big brands. Obviously, the Big Ten, they've got some big ones as well with the USC coming over, Oregon, but the SEC, they add Oklahoma and Texas, which are arguably top 5 brands in themselves, joining the likes of Alabama, Florida, Georgia, LSU, Tennessee, and so many others.
Yeah, and I really am looking forward to seeing Oklahoma and Texas get over there. Just because it really is going to, put them in more competitive games. I don't know if that's the right word I want to use, but it's going to give them options more competitive games. And they're going to be able to play each other a little more often. Maybe like that very tense battle, we'll get to see them square off a bit more. That'll be fun. But man, the SEC, it's going to be really, really, really good football here in the next season or two. And it's really important for especially a team like Texas, who they've had some success in the past. They are they're really that team down in that state. They need to get their footing right this year, and by the time they move to the SEC, they need to be ready to compete, because if they go into that conference and go like 6-6, like that's just terrible for the brand. So it'll be exciting to see what happens, because the competition is going to be much bigger, much steeper. But if Tennessee, or not Tennessee, but Texas and Oklahoma, if they do this right, I mean, it could make this conference just even more fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And Chase, I do want to ask you before we move into our top storylines, what do you think about all this realignment? Are you happy about it? Do you think it's ruining the sport like some people are saying? What are your thoughts overall on divisions starting to crumble a little bit, yet other divisions getting bigger brands?
I wouldn't say it's ruining the sport. It's hurting teams for sure. Like there's, as I mentioned, the smaller teams, it sucks for them. It's not going to help them if they're not going to get as many big time games. We're not going to get to see as many potential upsets, because more and more teams are just setting up wider and wider gaps for their first games. So we're not going to get as much of that. But at the same time, in terms of the sport just in general, and like the college football landscape in general, it's not dying. It's going to create some better games, some more prominent schools you're going to be facing off more often, which is cool. But it's going to be interesting to see kind of how it plays out with this college football playoff, because I mean, there are teams that like USC, say if they played in the Pac-12, they go they have a 10-win season, where in the Big Ten they might have an 8-win season, but like they would clearly be the number 1 team in the Pac-12 just because the Big Ten's so like deep. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that does play out. But overall, I would say I'm like feeling other than overwhelmed. Like by time this all happens, I'll feel like kind of the same. Like it'll be just moving on, still talking about Michigan pushing for the Big Ten, Michigan State trying to be on the up and up. Still Bama's Bama, Georgia's Georgia, all that type of stuff, regardless of conference.
And I've kind of got two perspectives on this. I think one, I love the openness, the open feel of college football. Not, every single game is going to be the best game, but there's a lot of fun little games. I mean, think about Cole McDonald when he was on Hawaii. Like, that's not a big team. That's not a team that's going to make a ton of moves, but I wanted to tune in, So there's a lot of the unregulated aspect of college football that I enjoy thoroughly. But then again, I think about it, and there's over 80 games happening through the first week of college football once it starts at, late August, early September. But I think about it, the only game I'm thrilled to watch is LSU Florida State. Every other game is either going to be a blowout or it's these two teams are going to be battling for ninth place in their conference. That doesn't really interest me. So I think with this movement, we're going to get a little bit more regulated, but we're also going to get better football, I think.
Yeah, I can see that, and I hope that is the case. I hope we do get better at football, because it's fun watching good football, and then when it comes to bad football, it's fun watching action, but watching really bad football, that's not fun. So hopefully we do just get a better product overall. If that's the case, no matter what the hell happens, we can see 30 teams moving every year. If the product's going to get better and better, that's what matters.
Yeah. All right, well, let's hop into some of our top storylines. I think number one, especially for this season, at least in my opinion, is the parity throughout the league this year. I mean, there's so many teams that are very, very talented. And when I look at college football as a whole, you have Georgia at number one. They've won back-to-back championships. They're looking for their third. So they are a clear standout to me. I think there's another couple of teams that are also very good and can vie for that number one spot. But really, when I look from 2 to maybe 13, 14, I think all of these teams can make a push for a playoff spot. So there's so much parity in the league this year, and I'm extremely excited because we could potentially see Alabama yet again be on the outside looking in, but not even appear in an SEC championship. We could see a Big Ten that boasts Penn State as the number one team, not Michigan or Ohio State. So there's so much parity in college football this year, and I think that's what has me the most excited. Georgia's going to be there, but so many other teams could make it there as well.
To really further that point, my first, my rankings 1 through 18, I have legitimate, arguments for all those teams to be in that top 4 contention, which that is fun. That is exciting. All you need is this thing to go this way, that thing to go that way, and all of a sudden, all this teams in the college football playoffs. So it is great that there is good parity. With the transfer portal being the way it is nowadays, there is a lot of movement. So talent isn't necessarily being hoarded by a school like Bama and Georgia, where guys are kind of stuck behind. They don't want to miss a year, so they don't want to transfer. We're seeing movement more and more and more, and it's creating this parity and really evening out the talent. We might talk about it down the road, but school like Iowa, where last year they were competitive, but the offense was just terrible. I mean, there's no other way to put it. They now get Cade McNamara and Eric All, two guys from Michigan who, they weren't, two dominant pieces, but Cade McNamara is, it's night and day compared to what they had in-house if going to the year without him. So just moves like that might not have been able to happen as smoothly in the past without the transfer portal is what's really kind of keeping this parity alive, and it really is exciting.
Yeah, Iowa's a great example. I mean, number one defense in the country last year, very last offense in the country. So that's kind of crazy. And then when you look at the coaching staff, they need to put up an average of 25 points a game over the season. If they don't, they're going to see some heads rolling, which I think is kind of weird to put that out there publicly, maybe keep that behind the scenes. But nonetheless, that Iowa team could be very interesting because I don't think Cade McNamara is a bad quarterback. I think he played pretty solid for Michigan overall. Michigan just found a better quarterback. So he's going to head to Iowa and potentially bring this team into contention for the Big Ten overall. And there's just so much. And I think the big reason why there's so much parity is we'll move to our second point, that being how many top quarterbacks are in the league this year. When you're just looking at 2024 draft eligible quarterbacks, I currently have 17 when it comes to the scouting report. Guys that I am super hard paying attention to upcoming year to see, do they have that potential to get to the next level? And that's, again, only counting the eligible quarterbacks for this upcoming year. You're not including some of the young guys. I know one guy that I'm super excited and I think will play when it comes to the latter half of the season is Dante Moore out of UCLA. He was a 5-star recruit, and I think he'll get some play time. But the quarterback play has never been higher when it comes to college football.
Yep, 100% right. And yeah, Dante Moore, Michigan boy, funny enough, but super excited to see him, get that run. I agree. If it doesn't happen right away, it will happen at some point. But and even going just outside the NFL players, there's still very good college quarterbacks that aren't going to be NFL guys that still put on a great product. And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of guys where it's like, okay, this dude, he's coming back. He's come back for his grad transfer year. He's coming off of injury, and he's going to lead this offense to a ton of fun. It's all a really big part of it. There's of all the teams that you could rationally consider for the top 25. I mean, every single one of them has a quarterback that offers legitimate promise, and that's great. That's awesome, because even 10 years ago, you could say only 20 of the teams that, let alone the 60 that you might consider, could have that type of promise. So absolutely, this 2024 class for quarterbacks is going to be a ton of fun. But even get to see a guy like Drew Aller, who's going to be a true sophomore, getting that job. The guys that are going to be a 2025 class, 2026 class, they're going to get their run too. And there's some legitimate dudes that are going to come out and compete from day one. It's a ton of fun, man.
Yeah, I just want to kind of run through some of the names here. Caleb Williams, obviously USC, they're going to be a competitor. Caleb Williams, the favorite for the Heisman, no doubt about that. You got Drake May out of North Carolina, phenomenal talent. I think North Carolina, not necessarily a team that's going to be vying for a playoff spot right off the rip, but if we see enough from Drake May, they absolutely could go contend for the ACC. Then you go look at J.J. McCarthy with Michigan. They're going to be in the race. Michael Penix Jr. in Washington, Quinn Ewers in Texas, Jaden Daniels, LSU, Bo Nix with Oregon, Spencer Rattler with South Carolina. He kind of surprised some people towards the end of last season, knocking off the likes of Tennessee and some other teams. So I'm curious to see what we can get out of Spencer Rattler. DJ Uiagalelei, obviously he goes over to Oregon State, leaves Clemson. Does he get more of an opportunity there? And does he get a better offense? Because it was pretty simple at Clemson. It was, hey, our guys are better. Let's just go run a simple offense. I think now that he's with Oregon State, they're going to need to kind of scheme a little bit more. So do we see a better DJ Uiagalelei? How about Jordan Travis with Florida State, Joe Milton with Tennessee, Tyler Van Dyke with Miami? A lot of guys with a lot of good teams. And I know specifically you wanted to talk about Joe Milton because there's so much talk right now that Joe Milton is the next Anthony Richardson, which obviously you see the arm, how talented it is. But it is a little bit weird because Joe Milton, he's a sixth-year player compared to Anthony Richardson, who only started 13 total games when he was coming out for the NFL.
I mean, I pending something drastic, which I don't believe is going to happen. We already know what we're getting from Joe Milton. We've seen him in a Michigan sweater, me personally, and he transferred out because he wasn't ever going to be the guy. And Hendon Hooker goes down. I also sorry that I just remember this play that shows the lack of awareness that Joe Milton has. Now, the previous year when he was starting for Tennessee, can't remember who they were playing, but it was last play of the game. You're losing. You score a touchdown, you win. And he ran the ball out of bounds without very much pressure to try to stop the clock after it had been already sitting 0 for about 6 seconds. So Joe Milton, no awareness. I really don't get the hype. I know the arm is exciting. I know that the athleticism is exciting, but his efficiency last year is just because it's such a small sample size. In a bigger sample size, he's going to have struggles. He doesn't read the play well enough. He's not accurate enough. He's not poised enough under that pressure. Like it's gonna flop. It's the same thing as the Steelers. Everyone's talking about, oh, the Steelers gonna be so great this year. Kenny Pickett's gonna be elite. I just don't see that happening. I don't get it. It's Tennessee is the Pittsburgh Steelers of NCAA football. Just saying that right there.
Wow. I mean, looking at our rankings right here, you had them ranked 6 spots higher than I did.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's more of a where I have them now compared to where I think they're gonna finish. Like if I had them end of season rankings, what I think they're gonna have, and maybe I have it differently. But going into week 1, it still is hard to say. Like they're gonna be super down, because even with Joe Milton being a guy that I don't fully trust, they do run a hard offense that is just like an offense that is so hard to stop that even if he is more inefficient, like he could still do enough to get it done, like as a college quarterback, not an NFL prospect, but as a college quarterback.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk about another storyline I thought was interesting, and that's with all this realignment coming through, this is the time for teams to finally hit that window. Thinking specifically Michigan. Obviously, they've won the Big Ten back-to-back years. They're going to have to do it again, and this is their time to go for it, because next year you're getting USC, you're getting UCLA, you're getting Washington, you're getting Oregon, you're getting really good teams filling the division. So I think Michigan, definitely one of those teams. I think, it doesn't really necessarily go for the SEC because of how many talented teams are there already, but who knows? We got to see some other stuff as well. Florida State, can they do it? There's so many teams that really need to jump on their opportunity now, because next year when realignment comes, it's all downhill. I mean, you got a lot harder competition.
Oh, yeah, for sure you do. It really is put up or shut up, because windows are closing for some teams with all that realignment, as you mentioned. And Michigan really is like a great example that we could talk about when the time comes more as well. But this is the ultimate put up or shut up. Like everything, the car, like it's all there. It really is time to prove it. So absolutely, the window is going to close, not necessarily because these teams are getting worse, but just because the way that this landscape's going to shake out, it's going to make it such a different dynamic getting in.
Yeah, and I was struggling to come up with other examples, but I'm just thinking, let's look at the teams that are actually leaving their conference to go elsewhere. USC. I mean, this is their time. They're in a Pac-12 that does not see Ohio State, does not see Michigan. Let's go see USC do it. Let's go see Washington do it when it comes to the Pac-12. How about Texas before they head over to USC? I mean, I think they could win the Big 12 right now, but could they go and beat Georgia? Could they beat Bama? Could they beat LSU? I don't really know. So even the teams that are leaving their division for a better market, a better spot to be in, this is their time as well.
Oh, for sure it is. Like it's not going to get any easier for a team like USC, even though I think that they are a program that's hopefully continuing on the up and up. Like it's not going to get easier. You're going to lose some big talent this year, but even with that talent, if the whole team was returned the following season, or if the team was in the Big Ten this year, like that it's not like, oh, this is a breeze. No, right now you have a large talent gap from the top teams to the bottom teams within your conference. Like you got to take it, and every single one of the teams that is moving, they need to have that same mentality. Obviously, you're going in each season and be like, we're going to do everything kind of go in a national championship, but no, right now it's okay. We have to win this conference championship. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like we have to lose this weekend, or have to win this weekend, not afford to lose this. So teams really need to understand that, and hopefully that is the case.
Yeah, 100% agree. I guess finally, unless you have any other stories that you want to talk about, I think the last one to talk about is the Georgia Bulldogs, and can they three-peat? When you look at college football history, there's only been one three-peat in college football history, and that was Minnesota winning 3 straight national championships in 1934, 1935, and 1936. Obviously, it's not very common. So could we potentially see Georgia do that? When you look at 2022, they had arguably the best defense we've ever seen in college football. 2023, you see an absolute blowout of TCU after they snuck by an Ohio State team that snuck into the playoffs themselves. So this Georgia team, Obviously, they have a lot going for them. I think the defense personally will be better than last year. However, I don't think it'll stack up to that legendary 2022 defense. But the real question comes to quarterback. Stetson Bennett, I don't think was a fantastic quarterback. And especially when you look at him as an NFL prospect, not really there. But when you think of college football play, he was steady enough where that defense could make plays. Insane players like Brock Bowers and Kenny McIntosh could go out and make those plays. So Georgia, a very good team this year. They don't have that steady quarterback play, at least that we know of. We'll have a new quarterback in there. So can they go out there and three-peat?
Yeah, I certainly don't want to tell you it's impossible. A lot of it does kind of rely on, or I guess depend upon what Carson Beck is going to do, under the center, because pending something drastic, Carson Beck is going to be that dude. If he can play well and he's got the talent, where hopefully he can go in there and do it, then 100%, because the defense is going to be great yet again. Like Georgia, that's what they do, is they produce defense and running backs. So I want to say it definitely is possible, and there's a reason that they're getting as much love as they are this year, just from the media, from general consensus, because they are a talent team, because there still is enough there. Even with Stetson Bennett leaving, and he really he drove the ship there. He was kind of like he was kind of like the captain. He was kind of like a pilot of an airplane. Where the airplane is full of all these electronics, and without the airplane, you're not going in the air. But he's the one that's also making sure it gets back down on the ground too. It's that type of thing where Stetson Bennett was that, and Carson Beck has a chance to be more dynamic, but it is really a wait and see. So even if he isn't as dynamic as he could be, the defense just needs to do what they've done the last couple of years, and it won't be much of an issue.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to head into our top 10 rankings. Georgia, obviously the consensus number one over here. We've talked about them quite a bit there. I think just quickly, I wanted to point out a couple of key players to look at. Obviously, Brock Bowers, he is fantastic, the best tight end prospect we've seen. Some people will say since Kyle Pitts, and I think Kyle Pitts, an athletic freak, he is has a higher ceiling than the like of Brock Bowers, but I don't think we've seen the floor of a tight end that looks like he could already dominate when it comes to the NFL level, like we see here with Brock Bowers. And then I want to talk about Malachi Starks, the safety. He's a sophomore this year, a true sophomore. I think as a true freshman last year, he was absolutely fantastic. And obviously, you talked about him, Carson Beck. That's going to be a key player as well.
Yeah, for sure. And Malachi Starks is one of the guy that I've really highlighted as like he can emerge as one of the best defensive players in college football. And I mean, like defensive back, I think that's very, very, very possible. And then just defensive in general, like he's got so much talent, man. He looked great as a freshman. He's only going to get better and better over the season and over the years. He's going to be an awesome, fun prospect in the NFL. But the defense is the defense. Georgia, even they always get the high talent. It's gonna be fun to see these guys take off. But it really is going to be fun to see what Brock Bowers does with a different quarterback. I think that it's not going to change very much, because he is just he's just so talented. He is the best tight end prospect in my eyes that we have seen. He's potentially outside of Caleb Williams, the best player in college football. Honestly, he changes the game more than any other tight end that I've really seen in my life watching college football. He just has on an elite team, he still just drove so much offense. Without him, I mean, they drop a couple games, honestly. I don't think they go on the run they do without him. It's wholeheartedly believe that, just because he is so good, and he's going to continue to kind of really lead those boys up front, or on the offense side of the ball, especially if Carson Beck can deliver. But there is just there's just so much going for him. The offensive line, it's sturdy. It's got a lot of experience. It looks strong as always. As we mentioned, the defense, they lost a lot of bodies, but they're still going to be great and potentially could be better. I mean, and even like the receiving corps, there's still a lot of upside there. Even though Brock Bowers is going to be the dude, just all the receiving options have legitimate upside. It's a team that they could have one of the best offenses in the country on top of having the best defense in the country. And that's what makes you win a national championship.
Yeah, and who knows what we get out of Carson Beck. I mean, you could potentially see a higher ceiling on him than the likes of Stetson Bennett. And if you bring in a better quarterback than what Stetson Bennett was for this Georgia Bulldog team, that could be scary. But let's move on to our consensus number 2 team. Obviously, number 2 for the both of us, that being the Michigan Wolverines, back-to-back Big Ten championships. However, they have not been able to pass the first round of the college football playoffs. This team has a lot coming back. J.J. McCarthy, he's their junior quarterback, the best quarterback they've had in, I want to say, all of Jim Harbaugh's time. Then when you look at the run game, I mean, having Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, that is easily the scariest duo when it comes to a backfield.
Oh man, 100%. It's going to be super exciting. I can't believe Corum came back. He must have been too worried about the injury hurting his draft stock, but dude, it's going to be an incredible 1-2 combo. I've seen plenty of arguments saying that Blake Corum is the best running back in college football, and I like the offense. Maybe he's not the best, but I can certainly tell you that right with you, it is the best 1-2 duo. I don't think really anything else comes close kind of going into the season. But if JJ proves that he's a first round pick this year, then they're playing in the national championship. That just flat out, because he's improved a ton since his freshman year. I mean, we saw him his freshman year. He'd go out there, he'd run the ball, or he'd throw a bomb. Nothing else.
Then or fumble against Michigan State. Don't forget about
What's that?
I said, or fumble against Michigan State. Don't forget about that.
That's beside the point, silly. He'd go out there and in hopes of having a run player or throwing a bomb. And the efficiency obviously was kind of there, kind of not. Like it could have been better, could have been worse, but it was in so few plays. Last year, throughout the season, he just got better and better. You could see it. Got more confident, became more of a prolific passer on top of being a very smart runner. Like year 3, this is it, man. Put all the pieces together, take this team over the hump. Really get them to that national championship, kind of like you almost had them last year. And like you're going to the top 10 in the NFL draft and you're making a ton of money. So it really depends so much on him and what he does. But even outside of that, with that running back duo and with the D as kind of looking right now, like it's all there. It's the same type of thing as Georgia. Everything is there. It's just got to happen.
Yeah, and kind of when I think about this running back core, Blake Corum, and how you mentioned a lot of people see him as the best running back in college football right now. I think that could very much be the case with, like Deuce Vaughn last year. I mean, that guy was a fantastic college football running back. Now, he went extremely late in the NFL draft because the upside wasn't necessarily there when it comes to the next level. Blake Corum, I think, is an even better version of that. And then when you look at Donovan Edwards, he might be a top 3 running back when it comes to NFL potential. So, I mean, it's just dominant. And when you look at Michigan, when you think about Michigan overall, they've always been that team with a fantastic defense and a fantastic run game. That's not going to change this year.
I do want to warn people that Donovan Edwards will at one point be a top 3 running back in the NFL. Like, just he will be. I'm just warning you now. It was talked about last year. Like players on the team were saying that he was just the best player on the team, and this is before he was even touching the field. Like he's just that good, man. He's going to get high draft capital. If him and Corum both enter this year, I don't care if Corum outproduces. I would safely bet that a team spends that capital on Edwards instead, just because like it's truly all there. Like it is all there, and it's going to be so fun, to watch both these guys kind of complement each other.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time. All right, consensus number 3, that being Ohio State. And that is where we end an agreement when it comes to our top 10. But number 3 being Ohio State, no shocker there. This team is fantastic, and they arguably have the best player in college football right now, that being Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, I mean, again, I still think Caleb Williams is the best one in college football, but the same argument as like Brock Bowers, Marvin Harrison, the same thing. Like, if you want to make the argument, like I'll hear you out. I'm not going to be like, no, shut up, because like he's just so good. I mean, you look at these last few wide receivers that have left like Ohio State. Just like you can look at them as duos or as trios, whatever you want to do. Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka, like that's the best duo that they've had. Of all the ones they've had, those are the 2 best that they're going to have. Kyle McCord has everything lined up for success. He has 2 of, in my opinion, probably the the top two of the like five best receivers in college football. If not, you can put Ibuka even higher than that. He has a very talented running back room with Travion Henderson and Mayan Williams, and like it's there. Like the offense, like he's been given the keys to a Bugatti. Is he gonna keep it on the road, or is he gonna slam it into a tree? I really don't know, but I don't see how a 5-star recruit comes in and slams this thing into a tree. Like that'd be an absolute train wreck if that somehow happens.
Yeah. I mean, me personally, I've got Ibuka as my wide receiver too. And you mentioned Travion Henderson as well, being a fantastic back. If he can stay healthy, it's going to be great. The big question, Kyle McCord, but I think also Ryan Day. I mean, this guy has struggled when it comes to Michigan. And
he's a fraud.
Even though he's been able to continue to produce high number quarterbacks, I think the average for first-year quarterbacks under Ryan Day is like 3,800 yards, 44 touchdowns, and 5 picks, which...
yeah, that's wild.
That sounds pretty good for a first-year quarterback, and I'm telling you, if Kyle McCord goes out and does that, we're going to be thinking very highly of him. And he is eligible for the draft, which is kind of crazy to think because he is a year one, but he's been stuck behind the likes of Justin Fields and CJ Stroud. So we'll see what happens. This is going to be a fantastic offense, and I don't want to say that they're only offense because when you look at JT, I'm going to butcher this, JT Tuimoloau.
Yeah, I can't say his name.
JT Tuimoloau. He is one of the best edge defenders that's going to be eligible for the NFL draft as well. So Ohio State, they've been known for wide receivers, but also for their defensive ends when it comes to the Bosa brothers and so many others. Wait, is that right? Or is it the Watt brothers? No, the Watt brothers were Wisconsin, the Bosa brothers. Yeah. So,
and I do want to bring up as well. I am the linebacker enthusiast of this podcast, and Tommy Eichenberg is going to, be in that conversation for, I can't remember the name of that award, but the best linebacker award this year. Like he is going to lead that team in tackles. He's going to be one of the best tacklers in the country this year.
A very dangerous team to keep an eye out for. Let's talk about the 4th ranked team in our consensus. Chase had them slightly higher than I did, and that being the LSU Tigers. This team is fantastic, and I got to agree with you when it comes to having them over Alabama because I personally think they're going to take the SEC West.
So do I, man. I think I know who you have it for then, but we'll get there when that time comes. But yeah, I mean, no, I'm super excited. I love Jaden Daniels. I think he is a awesome quarterback to root for in college football. Someone that can have that NFL upside too. But like he's going to command this LSU offense, which still, it's hard to compare LSU to that Joe Burrow led team because like that was just the best. That was just the best team in college football history. At minimum, the offense was. But man, like they're going to be great. Like you can never expect them to be that again. But they still have every tool to be great because I do believe in Jaden Daniels. I think that the offensive line is going to come in and be one of the more sturdy lines in the nation this year. And Malik Neighbors is really going to be a dude who he creates some arguments for like this guy's going to be a 1st-round pick. Like he's got the talent. All he's got to do is show that he's going to produce with Jaden Daniels. And I really think that can be the case. I mean, it's a ton of fun up front, on that offensive group and then in the defensive group. There's a guy by the name of Mason Smith who, if you're not familiar with Mason Smith, just be ready because like he is the definition of him. If you look up him in the dictionary, like it's Mason Smith. This guy's going to terrorize offensive lines this season, and he's gonna be in all the conversations for awards at the end of the year. He's gonna be someone who's a locked and loaded 1st-round pick in the NFL down the road. Like he's incredible, dude.
And I'm not necessarily the biggest Jaden Daniels fan, but when you think of it, he's coming back for another year. I think this is going to be his 5th year in college football, either 5th or 6th year in college football. He knows how to command an offense. This LSU team has been a lot better under the new coach. No offense to Coach O, because he had one of the best college football teams of all time, even though I don't think it was necessarily his doing. But
No, it was not at all.
but the LSU team last year really good, 10-4. They had big wins over the likes of Alabama, so I think they're going to continue to climb, and I think they will be representing the SEC West. So let's get to the number 5, I should say, the number 5 consensus team, and it is my 4th team. Can you guess who that is?
It's going to be the USC Trojans.
It is the USC Trojans. Yep, obviously, Caleb Williams. He won the Heisman last year. He should be the favorite to do it again.
So I've got kind of like how I did this. I took notes on teams, and I have like bullet points kind of. So I have the team in their ranking, and I have bullet points under that of things that I kind of want to make sure to talk about. 3 of my bullet points are Caleb Williams, and 2 of them are Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, I mean, nailed it.
Like, yeah, like literally. I mean, that's all you need to say, and then you can move on to the next team because Lincoln Riley is an awesome coach. I hope he takes the NFL leap one day, and we can see what he does, and I hope he has success if he does do that. But Caleb Williams, locked and loaded number 1 pick. You can, like lock it, throw away the key because things changing there. He's going to dominate another Heisman caliber season incoming. It's going to be so much fun. And then to join him up front, I mean, he's got Mario Williams to come and play a big role, and then Marshawn Lloyd, transferring over. I think this is a dude that could potentially terrorize, the Pac-12 this year, let alone just college football in general. What?
I'm not a big Marshawn Lloyd guy.
Hater.
Before we knew he was transferring over to USC, we were doing some running back scouting already for the NFL draft, and some of the things I saw just, wasn't the biggest fan. But at the same time, who was the running back for USC last year?
Eric Gray.
No, that would be Oklahoma.
No. Yeah, I don't remember.
I can't remember his name right now, but he got injured, and unfortunately, Travis Dye. There we go. Travis Dye, he got injured last year. I don't necessarily think Travis Dye was phenomenal either, so who knows? Marshawn Lloyd could come in here and have a big role, but I think the defense, they're going to be better than what they were last year. Lincoln Riley continues to build on top of not only the offense, but the defense as well, so I think they will be better next year. This year, and obviously the offense, having Caleb Williams there is going to be insane. And there's not that I'm wishing this at all, because I want to see Caleb Williams go out there and have the best college football season of all time. But if there's ever any scares, or if he decides that he wants to go shoot commercials and make big money, they've got some depth at quarterback too, including true freshman 5-star Malachi Nelson. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch this offense.
Yeah, some people had Malachi Nelson as the number 1 recruit in this class. There's a little bit of variability between him. I saw some guys say Dante Moore. I saw some people say Arch Manning. Some said Nico Emo, blah, 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 blah. So I can't say his name either. But he is the future once Caleb Williams is gone. And it's going to be a pretty seamless transition, just because he has that talent. So for whatever reason, if he needs to play, I don't really think there's too much concern.
All right, well, let's talk about our consensus number 6 team, that being the Alabama Crimson Tide. And this team, I think a lot of people see them as a team that's kind of fallen from grace. Obviously, Georgia, they've been that number 1 team over the last 2 years. Nick Saban, can he keep up with nowadays college football? But this is a team that I think a lot of depth, but no necessary stars. And that's why I have LSU personally winning the West over Alabama. When I look at this team, nothing screams best player in the country. Similar to last year, or unlike last year, I should say, when they had Bryce Young and they had Will Anderson Jr. Those guys were fantastic. This year, are we getting that same type of stardom in Alabama? I don't think so.
No, probably not. I'm intrigued to see what Jalen Milroe does in an expanded role. If he has issues, he does have Buckner and Simpson behind him as well. So there's enough depth there, at least, where one of those 3 quarterbacks will be able to do a good enough job to help kind of right the ship if there are struggles. But as a whole, some excitement with the skill positions, like Jace McClellan, Jermaine Burton, Corey Brooks are guys. Isaiah Bond is someone that I think we see a little bit of this year, but I think the following year is really when he kind of flourishes. So, like on that side of the ball, there definitely is some excitement, but it's nothing like it has been in the last couple of years. And losing Will Anderson, like that really is tough. It's hard for me to say that like, I want to put Bama a little bit lower. Like I really did. I wanted to bring myself to do it, but like it still is Alabama, even with sometimes having not the most talented guys and like having some interesting options at quarterback. Like they still find ways to get it done. So I still think that is going to be the case. They're still going to be very successful because Nick Saban is very good at his job.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy because after spring camp, you see Tyler Buckner transfer in, which doesn't mean the best things for Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson. So I'm interested to see who wins that battle. Right now, I feel like it's probably looking like more Buckner, but who really knows? And he joins Tommy Rees, who is their offensive coordinator over there at Notre Dame, now the offensive coordinator with Alabama, as we saw Bill O'Brien leave for Notre Dame, which, you can talk about whether you think that's an upgrade or not. But Bill O'Brien, even though not a guy we technically root for, he is a very good offensive coordinator. So interested to see what this Alabama team does and if they can kind of bring back the old Alabama that we've always been used to.
Yeah, and for sure is possible. But I do think I want to say, as I mentioned his name, I do think Jalen Milroe, is the one that wins this competition. Does he hold it all year? I don't know, but I do think like week one, he's the guy going.
Should we put money on it?
What do you think? I'm going to say no.
Good point. All right, let's just throw $5 on it because I don't have any money.
All right, fantastic.
All right. That's easy. It's $5 I've ever made in my life. All right, consensus number 7, that being Washington. We've got Michael Penix Jr. This was a team that when Michigan State lost to Washington last year, I was like, what the hell are we doing? Washington is the team that's going to beat us? But now you look at this Washington team, and they're a true contender for not only the Pac-12, but also a playoff spot with Michael Penix Jr. being the leader there.
Yeah, man, I am a big Michael Penix fan. I'm not a lefty quarterback guy. I've been very vocal about that. But Michael Penix is kind of my exception to that rule. He's just he looked great last year, man. I was excited for him to come out in the NFL draft potentially, be like a mid to late round guy that the Lions took a shot on and develop for down the road. Obviously, he did not come out and did Henry Hooker, which I'm still excited about. But Michael Penix is going to be a fun option whenever he does leave for the NFL. I think somebody is going to get someone who is at minimum a Teddy Bridgewater type of backup who if when he plays, you're not going to be worried, and someone who has legitimate starting potential. But he is going to quarterback this offense, which, last year got some fantastic offensive line play, really helped him stand tall, stand upright. And if that's still the case, I mean, he's just going to feast, especially with Romeo Odunze, and one of the, more talented wide receivers that we're going to see in college football. I'm really, really excited. My note is that Odunze is going nuclear this year, so watch out. I really think that is going to be the case. So there's a lot to look forward to, with that offensive group. But when you look back on the defense, I mean, I've seen a lot of linebacker hype, and the edge rushers. I really don't know much about them, but I've been seeing some good things to that they think that the pass rush can kind of improve. So hopefully that is the case, because I do like Washington. I do like rooting for Washington, and I do want to root for a Michael Penix-led team.
Yeah, and the big thing is Washington, they're returning a lot of starters from last year. When you look at last year, 11-2, and I'm kind of looking at the Pac-12 from the past season, and this was a gauntlet. USC 11-3, Washington 11-2, Oregon 10-3, Utah 10-4, Oregon State 10-3, UCLA 9-4. You had 6 teams there, all with 9+ wins, 5 of them in the double digits.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent up top. So I think it's going to be relatively similar this year too. I think that we're going to see a lot of those teams kind of go back into that competition. So it is fun and it is exciting. And I don't want to forget to mention Washington. They always have like an elite defensive back room. They always send somebody to the NFL each year with decent draft capital. So just be prepared for that to be great again.
Yeah, Washington, they finished on a 7-game win streak, which bodes extremely well for coming into this season, returning that many starters. All right, consensus number 8 ranking, that is Florida State. Man, we're getting some Florida State love, and I love it because Jordan Travis is fantastic, and bringing in the likes of Keon Coleman to add to already probably the tallest wide receiver room we've ever seen in college football, that's going to be a lot of fun.
You're not kidding. I mean, Johnny Wilson, he has that just, pure athlete tight end build, 6'7", 240, absolute just menace. It's going to be super fun to watch. And Keon Coleman, I do think he's going to have an incredible year. Alongside them, Jaheim Bell is someone who I think is a super talented tight end that's going to end up getting himself a decent, payday in terms of draft capital once he does make that NFL jump. And like all those guys they're making life so easy for Jordan Travis, who I agree. I think he is a talented quarterback who is going to have some just incredible options to throw the ball to. And then he also has, some backup, if he can't, how do I word this? If there's a situation where, he can't really throw the ball, handing you off to Trey Benson, another talented back like that guy's going to go out there, have a hell of a year. And, Mike Norvell, he always has a very, very efficient rushing offense. So combine that with what this passing game is going to be. I mean, they might be the number one offense in college football this year.
Yeah, and Trey Benson is one of those guys that I think has kind of started to see the love. Last year, there wasn't a ton of talk about him, but as we see this Florida State hype start gaining some steam, we see it out under Trey Benson as well, because I've seen more and more people coming out saying Trey Benson's a top 3 player in this upcoming, or a top 3 running back in this upcoming draft class. Trey Benson's a top 5 guy in this upcoming draft class. So we're starting to see more and more. And I think that might also be due to some injuries and some step backs from some of the top guys like Travion Henderson, Braylon Allen. But Trey Benson, he is extremely talented, rushing at 6.4 yards per carry last year. This is a guy that I think will yet again have another very good season. And I personally, I might throw a couple dollars on Jordan Travis winning the Heisman because there's so much around him at this point, and we know what a dual threat he is. Another year under his belt, who knows? He could be a sneaky Heisman candidate.
I do like that a lot. I really do. And I think he's going to have a lot of opportunity to throw the ball. Looking at the defense, I think the DB room has enough talent there to take a jump, but I still don't think it's going to be some like star-studded group. So, with Jared Verse up front and, rushing the passer is going to be huge. But I don't think we're going to see, this is like a top 5 defense. So like he's going to get more opportunities to throw the ball because they're not always going to be beating every team by 70. So it's going to be really fun. I like that bet.
All right, well, let's talk about our consensus number 9 team. And I think this is probably the team we have the lowest when you compare it to the national media and where they have this team. That being Penn State. We've got them at number 9. They're averaging around 5 or 6 when it comes to the national media. Penn State, obviously, a very good team last year. They're going to get another season under Drew Allar, his sophomore season. What are we going to see from him? Nick Singleton, arguably the best running back in college football right now, not going to be eligible for the draft next year, but a very good player nonetheless. And then, of course, the top tackle in the league with Olu Fashanu.
Yeah, and, my reason for having them, a little bit lower, and like still, I have them as my number 10 team, which it's still a respectable, spot. And with how we mentioned this year, a team that things go right, like they're a natural like contention, honestly. But the number one drawback is the defense. I think it's fine. I don't think it's screaming like, oh wow, this unit's gonna be fantastic this year. It's going to be the only thing holding them back because the offense is going to go dummy because Drew Allar is an awesome talent. I'm not saying his ceiling is necessarily Josh Allen, but like kind of how Josh Allen was like play style going into the NFL where like, he has that good size. He has a powerful arm he can run, but it was a little inefficient. He already started looking better and better throughout his freshman year when he got those opportunities. So now he's going into his sophomore season. He's going to be given the reins. I think that we see some major jumps. Even, from week 1 to week 7, I think he's going to be just transformed. And it really does help that he has, those incredible backs behind him with Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, who I'm a big fan of Katron Allen, and having Theo Johnson, who I think is going to be one of the nation's best tight ends this year. And once his time comes for the NFL, he's going to be another great NFL tight end. Like, there's a fun group of tight ends this season. We talk about the quarterbacks a lot, but the tight ends are a lot of fun too. But this offense, the tools are there. I think that if Drew Aller, continues to progress, maybe not this season, but the following year, that's a legitimate Heisman candidate.
Yeah, and there's some trends with these recent teams we've been talking about. Penn State 11-2 last year, finished on a 5-game win streak, so they're really getting in their groove. And I mean, Michigan and Ohio State, they've been that team or those teams, I guess, for the last couple of years. We saw an off year of Michigan State when they had Kenneth Walker. He really, brought in some hype for the Big Ten, but to see a team come in and be competitive with Michigan and Ohio State, I think that would be super exciting. And arguably, they have the best quarterback running back duo when it comes to future prospects, when it comes to the NFL. I think college football, the stats, they'll show something else, but when you're looking at NFL projection, they could have the best duo.
Yeah, absolutely they do.
All right.
Or could, I should say.
Finally, number 10, and, you're going to miss out on a top 10 team in your personal rankings because
that's fine.
How our consensus worked out, but we do have Clemson coming in at number 10.
Oh, so you showed a little bit of love for Clemson. Hey, where'd you have them ranked at then, number-wise?
I had them 10.
So you just hate Tennessee, don't you?
I have them
interesting.
15.
That's crazy. That's just how the average worked out. But anywho, yeah, I think there's upside for Clemson. DJU's out, like the fit just wasn't there, and now Kate Klubnik comes in, and I think there is a better fit there between him and DJU. I think he's I definitely hope, and I do think he's going to continue to take those steps because he has a ton of talent, but he still is kind of a wild card because it's same thing as DJU. When DJU got those opportunities when he was first going, it's like, oh man, here's the talent, like his kid's gonna flourish, and then kind of flopped. There's a chance it happens to Klubnik. I hope not, but again, like it still is a bit of a wild card. He does have some talent to throw the ball to between Adam Randall, who I think is going to be a very good pro down the road. Then Bo Collins and Tony Williams also joining that receiving core. It is going to be a lot of fun. And, Will Shipley, the running back there, if I kind of, say if is he going to be a dominant NFL back, I don't know. Like, I think he's going to be an NFL back, but like, he fits what this offense is going to do really well, and he's going to be great for this team again going forward. He really just is a great complementary piece.
Yeah, and I'm really excited on the defensive side of the ball. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., son of Jeremiah Trotter, who did play in the NFL. He was
that adds up.
Thank you, appreciate that. Very highly touted linebacking prospect. He's coming into his third season. I think he's going to be one of those top guys when it comes to the NFL draft next year at that position. So I think this is very much like in Alabama, where a team that has that huge brand value that has kind of fallen from grace a little bit. They don't have those extreme superstars, but you have very good players like Cade Klubnik, Will Shipley, Jeremiah Trotter, and others. Can they put it all together? Can they get enough done against teams that have some more stars, such as the Florida States?
Yeah, and it's going to be fun to watch. I do think that they're going to compete, but I have them at 13 because I still think they are steps behind some of these other schools. But like they are going to compete, and they're still going to be in battles with Florida State. But when you're looking at those two teams, I do think they are truly separate tiers.
Yeah. All right, real quickly, we are going to end the show here in a second, but I did just want to go over those next 5. We're not going to talk about them, but I just kind of want to show where our consensus has those next 5. Coming in at 11, you got Utah, Tennessee at 12, Texas at 13, Oregon at 14, and Notre Dame at 15. So those are your consensus ranks from the WNP podcast when it comes to preseason college football rankings. Anything else you got to say, Chase?
I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So where'd you end up having A&M?
A&M I have at 25. Consensus has 21.
Yeah, because I've got them at 17. Okay.
Yep.
Interesting. I think that Texas is my cutoff like at 18. So Texas A&M back to back there. But I think those top 18 teams are all teams that things go right. I truly think that they could go on and win an Addy. And I really want to make sure to talk about A&M before we left because it really is put up or shut up. I mean, Jimbo Fisher, he has everything there. They've had, 3 really strong recruiting classes. These guys are finally, getting these starts. Last year, the ones that did, they kind of underwhelmed. Like, if it doesn't happen now, does it ever happen? Because this is like the most talent that they've probably ever had on this roster. I mean, they're gonna have like 16 5-stars going this year, and they've got like 6 5-stars alone just on the edges. Like they've got so much talent. Like the defense it cannot fail. It absolutely cannot fail. If it does, then they're in trouble because like if you can't work with that kind of talent, what the hell can you work with?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, though. You look at the division they play in, the SEC. I mean, are they going to go out and beat the Georgias, the Alabamas, the LSUs, the Tennessees? According to our rankings, no. So, I mean, I agree with you. Having that many 5-stars, you got to put up or shut up. But, I mean, look at the New York Rangers. They've had so many high first-round picks in the NHL draft, and where are those guys now? They're sitting third line minutes.
Nothing. So, yeah. Can't work with talent. Can't develop talent. You don't deserve to be in that position of power.
Right. The biggest disparity when it comes to my ranking high versus your ranking low is Ole Miss. I had them at 17. You had them at 27, which put them 22nd in our consensus. I just think Jackson Dart and then Quinshon Judkins, who, I mean, that guy was crazy. So I think that this Ole Miss team could have some good competition in them as well. But again, SEC, hard conference. It's going to be tough for them to do anything past, 10 wins.
Yeah, I'm sure they don't have any hate for Ole Miss.
Oh, it seems like you hate them.
Yeah, I mean they're just outside looking in, and I do think that there is talent there. I do like Jackson Dart, but Quinshon Judkins, he is my guy. If he can continue what he did last year and improve, and Jackson Dart can improve on what he's shown, then yeah, that could be a team that goes and wins 9 games. But as you mentioned, the SEC, it's got to be so hard. Like there's a lot of talent this year.
Yep. Well, that's going to do it for the show. I want to thank you so much for coming out and giving it a listen. Make sure to check out some of our other content when it comes to the offseason. We've talked about the NFL division predictions. We've gone through all of those thus far. Next week, we're going to be doing hot takes. I think it's going to be hot takes having to do with the NFL. And then the week following will be hot takes when it comes to college football or maybe fantasy. We've got 3 hot takes episodes regardless coming at you very soon. We're very excited for football. We hope you are as well. If you are listening on YouTube, if you could please give us a like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell to turn on notifications. We'd really appreciate it. Put us down in the comments what your top 10 rankings are looking like. If you're listening on a podcast platform, if you could please give us a 5-star rating and a follow. We'd absolutely love you for it. Thanks so much for coming out. And as always, we're not professionals.